with those items that need to be attended to on the Amoco, then the Amoco station will remain as just an empty building, but having some facade changes.
Correct. And those remedies that we're referencing, they have already started. I mean, they'll be done quickly. There's no, I don't have a date. I know they've already started, and there's not a long list, frankly.
Okay. And that there is not any kind of definitive prospect or project for the Amoco at this time?
No, and in fact, the references to including in the packets the photographs, and will definitely assist with staff to make sure that you see all of those. I think it's helpful to understand the potential and the possibility, but I don't at all want to intimate that that we're at some specific point with that, and so the answer is no.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. White.
Okay, so just to make sure that I understand what you've said, in the first quarter of 2011, you're going to come back to us with more information as far as plans and a timeline on the Amoco station?
Let me kind of try to spell it out more clearly.
Thank you.
The document, set the IHOP aside for the moment.
Okay.
The document you have in front of you amends the development agreement that deals with the TIF plan. And that amendment deals very narrowly with the IHOP issue. In talking with staff, and I think consistent with discussions we had at the last meeting, that the details on how Project Area 2 is to be addressed under the TIF plan need to be revisited. They basically need to be spelled out. It's very broad, and I think the part of the basis for that was there was an original contemplation that the Project Area 3 across the street would actually have gone first, and that's why this area is not as spelled out. So we've agreed with staff that in the first quarter of 2011, we would work with the city on the amendment to the TIF plan and the TIF agreement that addresses the entirety of Project Area 2. That'll include a TIF commission hearing and things to that extent. So that obviously takes time. At a minimum, you've got a 45-day notice once everybody has a plan to have a TIF commission meeting. We want to proceed with that document, just like we've done with this document, which is that it's a true collaboration with staff. So it'll take some time. We're going to initiate that as soon as after the holiday, frankly. I can't say that we're going to be in front of you, at a certain date, because we clearly need to work through all of that. What I'm really saying is, I think the next time we show up and are asking you to vote on a document related to this redevelopment plan, you're clearly going to want some detailed explanation as to the status of the Amoco station and specifically what those plans are, as well as for the entirety of the development. So I'm interpreting all the comments as much as we've interpreted them on how to address this document, as also saying that there are some very heightened expectations to have some explanation and some status report and some progress plans on the Amoco station itself at that time. So just telling you that we know that. And so when we do come work with staff's aware of that. I think they're all on the same page as everyone. When we work through that plan and come in front of you, you should expect at that point also to be briefed in full detail as to what the status of the Amoco station is, and as well as the rest of the plan.
So it's encompassing, you're talking about all of Project 2
Yes, ma'am.
and just so much more comprehensive. Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
Mr. Van Busker.
Okay, so sometime in the first quarter of next year, we should be seeing project costs, specific project costs?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's unfortunate that some of us were not privy to the pictures that our fellow alderman viewed. Is there possibly, are there prints of those available for us to view here this evening somewhere? Does anyone have those? I'm not sure where he got those from. But.
I think we can print those off and get them to you. However we want to do that, whether you want to take a brief recess and John can print those off.
I would
Is everybody in agreement?
We do that? Yeah.
Okay, we'll take a brief 5-minute recess, let you print those off, and we'll be back shortly.
Very good.
Thank you.
Are we on? We'll reconvene with the second reading of item number 8. We had taken a brief recess, passed out pictures. We were trying to bring something up on the computer where we could display it for the public to see. Unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, we weren't able to bring that up. At this point, is there any other discussion? Alderman Van Buskirk.
My only other question, I guess, when this building is rehabbed, is that just going to be a facelift on the outside? Or will there be changes on the inside of the building? And if opportunity would present itself, is there a possibility of some business actually going into that building after it's rehabbed and opening there? Or what's the possibility?
Are you, in reference to the photographs you're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Here? Okay. Let me just kind of try to comment with the intent of what the photographs are meant to convey, and that is simply that there is a very viable possibility at redeveloping this building. And these are two examples you have in the metro of similar facilities being redeveloped in a pretty decent way, in a way where you're reusing buildings with retail activity, and we think that that this can be done in a way that tracks with the city's development code and your area plan and all of those specifics. There is no designated plan to, in fact, redevelop this. This building may still end up needing to be torn down. For the most part, that will be driven by the very question you've raised, which is there a business going in that building? One of the things that is most important to the city staff, as well as us, is to maximize the use of the lands that is there with the available tenants that present themselves. And so it is not that there is a specific tenant or that this building will in fact ultimately be redeveloped. It really is the tenant question is going to drive part of the answer to that, and part of not all, but part of the basis for deferring the decision on this building in particular is that there are successful redevelopments of these similar facilities, and that's really what's evidenced in the pictures that you have. So it's just an example. We would not redevelop the building and not have a tenant when ultimately what may end up happening is that the right tenant mix is going to cause that building to come down, which is what everybody's essentially was previously thinking may be the ultimate result anyways. But really to say that this is a possibility, and it's not just words. There's been actions been done on similar facilities, and that's a definite possibility.
Fine. With that in mind, then, does that mean there is going to be some kind of facelift on that building, or, a little bit of makeup could make a world of difference? It's not too presentable the way it is, certainly.
I definitely understand that. And part of the discussions we've had since we met with you all last, city staff has given us some comments on particular cleanup steps that they've suggested on the building. We've essentially taken all of those, initiated all of those, and started with that. I think what I would say to you is, like I said earlier, one of our jobs is to listen and be responsive as we work through this. I'm hearing that this is, in fact, a possibility that the board may be willing to entertain in the right circumstances, which means the right tenant mix and right design. But in the interim, there's still a desire to see some increased improvements on that. So what I would say is we'd factor that into this TIF amendment process, which obviously we know is going to take place almost immediately after the IHOP. So I would just factor that in and say that we'll definitely work to be responsive.
I would hope that the block company might have the incentive to go ahead and go beyond even what is being required by our staff.
No, I appreciate that.
Thank
Definitely.
you.
Definitely.
Any other questions?
I do have,
Ms. Nelson?
and I'm not sure about this one. Will there be a site plan that comes back to the Board of Aldermen on this project at a later date?
the site plan, the preliminary site development plan for this entire area, which includes where IHOP is to be built, the remaining portion of the Dodge dealership property, as well as the where the car wash, self-serve car wash sits in the gas station we're talking about. Preliminary site development plan has already been approved. The development that was submitted, or the site development plan rather, that was submitted met all of the requirements of the Highway 350 corridor design standards. Therefore, because they met all of our ordinance requirements, it did not require, it allowed staff to approve it, which is the normal site plan review process. The final site plan they have submitted for phase 1, which is just IHOP and does not include the gas station or the remaining portion of the Dodge property or former Dodge property. They've submitted that final site plan that also for IHOP has met all of the requirements of the Highway 350 design standards. So again, it's been approved. The gas station phase 2, or the gas station, which is a part of phase 3 actually, and then phase 2, which is the remainder of the Dodge property, when those final site plans come in, if they meet all of the requirements of the Highway 350 design standards, they're staff approved. If they do not, which the gas station in this case, if they rehab the gas station as one option that's left, or potentially left, depending on how you all vote tonight, if they come back and want to rehab the gas station, that final site plan, as well as an amended preliminary site plan, will have to come back before you all, because it will not meet all the requirements of the Highway 350 design standards. So that will necessitate the site plan coming back before the Planning Commission and then to you. It'll be just like a rezoning process as far as the review and approval process. If they tear the gas station down, build in accordance or substantially in accordance with the approved preliminary site plan, you won't see the final site plan because it meets all of the city's ordinance requirements in that regard.
Okay, I guess my premise for that is that on one of the things that we had at the last meeting, I have a concern with 75th Street and how it comes across with the light, and then they're going to take out 75th Street and then somehow have an entrance on there. I mean, and then you'd have to come out on the other side, and if somebody's at 75th Street, how are they going to get and using that as a thoroughfare? So those are some of my questions, and I didn't know what the process would be about addressing those type of issues.
Let me put up we have on the computer the illustration of the approved preliminary site plan, which will show the 75th Street issue I think you're talking about. Let me make that a little larger. It should make it easier to get in and out of the property. What it will impact is currently where people can be headed southbound on Raytown Road and make a left onto 75th Street. That will go away. They won't be able to make that turn because there'll be where there's now a median break, a median will be constructed. Also, cars coming out of what is now 75th Street onto Raytown Road wanting to turn left and go south, cars will no longer be able to do that. Basically, the intersection of Raytown Road and where 75th Street is today will become a right-in, right-out only. You won't be able to go south. So if somebody within this development wanted to go south on Raytown Road, they would exit the property onto westbound 350, go down to Raytown Road at the signalized intersection, and then turn left onto southbound Ray. And that actually will be safer because it's at a signalized, controlled intersection, and it'll reduce the frequency of and the chance for accidents.
So the light's going to change down to that entrance?
We don't know.
There won't be a light?
That light likely will go away. We don't know that yet. We have funding. This is separate from this project. We have federal funding in place that will be hiring a consultant that will look at this whole area of Raytown Road, Highway 350, as well as the 75th Street, dealing with the access with the residential area to the north, taking into account the residential area to the north of westbound 350 and how they access westbound Highway 350, and where they is likely to change, or could change, I shouldn't say likely, but may change to a different location. They obviously can't be cut off. They have to have access to westbound 350, but it's just a matter of, we have 3 signals with where the Walmart entrance
and
is.
75th,
75th Street and then Raytown Road, and it's actually
Right.
75th Street and Raytown Road. Those signals are too close together, and that causes traffic congestion.
True.
This project, as well as the engineering study that will be underway, will help address that issue and will actually help the traffic flow on westbound 350 as well as eastbound.
But if they go ahead and start with IHOP and that very first top project, or the bottom one on there, then is that engineering study coming later to address that?
Phase one will be is going to be in a timeline where it will be open and constructed before the engineering study's done, but all of phase one will not impact 75th Street and any of the
Right.
driveway entrances that we're dealing with in relation to 75th Street today. Those changes come when phase two comes in. So we recognize there is a timeline, and we need to get that engineering study, or it's not a study, but engineering design done sooner than later so that it's in place.
Is that a cost to the developer or to the city?
The engineering work?
Yes.
That's the cost of the city, but we have funding from the federal government in the last federal transportation bill that will help pay for that, the large majority of that cost.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Van Busker.
I have one comment, and I mentioned this 2 weeks ago in our meeting in regards to the 10-foot wide bike and pedestrian path. And and I'm in a minority probably in stating this, but the bike lanes in our community, I think, are probably more of a feel-good, politically correct type of thing than they are really functional. There may be some places where they are functional, but probably not here. But I guess my question, I do have a question, is about the TDD. What exactly is a transportation development district, and what impact does that have on taxpayers?
The Transportation Development District is something authorized by the state that would allow the essentially a corporation of a quasi-government that would have taxing authority. The proceeds from that tax is used to impact the transportation within that district. So anything that has to do with roadways, parking lots, bridges, overpass, underpass, anything at all that has to do with transportation would be eligible to be funded through that district.
So that would be an additional tax specifically for the TDD, is that correct? Okay. Thank you.
Alderman Ertz.
I'd make a motion to adopt.
We got a motion by Alderman Ertz, second by Alderman White. Any other discussion? Alderman Hamilton.
Yeah, in regards to phase two of this, is there a timeline for this that's solid, or is this just nebulous at this point?
Well, I would say this. I mean, there's two components from my view with phase two, and that is one, the further amendment of the TIF plan in detail, which will be initiated at the beginning of the first quarter of next year. The actual, I think really what you're asking about is when are we going to see some other tenants on the site, and what's the timeline for that?
Yeah.
Practically speaking, that is at this moment, it's entirely driven by the market for tenants, and so it's clear that things are improving. We recognize that there's a lot of appealing factors for Raytown in this particular site. As we're going through this, IHOP has been a very active participant in a partnership with getting this completed. We've had a few different potential interests that have popped up in the course of this. Some very specific, some a little more speculative. It's very possible that this will happen relatively soon in 2011. It's also possible not. I will tell you this, part of my, aside from the fact that the Board of Aldermen wants to see the details on this hammered out in staff, and we've talked about financial projections, part of my motivation for advising the developer to move forward with this TIF amendment in the first quarter is that we have had greater activity and interest on the site. And it's very important that the rest of that site plan you've referenced get worked out so we don't have to really push through with all of you and work through all of this for each particular tenant, that we can get a lot of this stuff laid out. And part of the motivation for that is that things are picking up out there. So there is, nebulous is a very common on when you're going to have our deals show up with tenants. There's been a lot more activity, and I'd expect to see, and it helps having this development occur. I mean, by your actions tonight, we can have IHOP started and opened up in the summer, and it's just like everything else. Activity can sometimes generate more activity.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comment? Alderman White.
I do appreciate you coming up tonight and explaining things. I know you've had to explain several items a couple of times to us. Thank you for your patience, but it does seem to me that you listened to what we had to say in November. I will tell you there are still some concerns just on my part about the financial data. And I do appreciate that you're coming back in the first quarter of the next year. And I hope you've got, it sounds like you're working on more of that, but we're really going to want to look at that pretty well.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comment? I do have comment. I would like to thank you also for coming out this evening and spending time to explain where you're at on this project. I do have some concerns about the property and the maintenance of the property. Up to this point, we've had a history where it's not been very well maintained. And I would hope through the Community Development Department and Block and Company that we would be able to make sure that that property is maintained in an upstanding order so that that way when the people pass through our community, they don't see something that, although it is a blighted area, something that's not just falling down and just aesthetically looks bad. I do want to see a property that is entertaining to business coming to this community, and look forward to seeing IHOP there this summer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I will just add to comment. One of the things I do want to make sure everybody understands is that staff has been great, but I think Tom has, in particular, has been very communicative with me on thoughts and concerns, and I like to think I'm pretty accessible. So, and we also do want to continue to be responsive to the thoughts you have. So even as this is working through, if you have a particular comment or whatnot, and you share it with Tom or somebody, I'll make sure and take it in and see that we can try to factor in some of this stuff as we go along as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment? At this point, we got a motion and a second. I'd ask the clerk to call the vote.
Alderman Ertz,
Yes.
Alderman White,
Yes.
Alderman Hamilton, Alderman Van Buskirk,
Yes.
Alderman Melson,
Yes.
Alderman Mock,
Yes.
Alderman Lightfoot,
Yes.
Alderman Kramer,
Yes.
Thank you.